Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we just finished watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. I mean, how else would you watch it? So, you know. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on the wrap-up of Season 7, the last season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes, this will be the last season wrap-up.
Yes. Never fear, though. We have, I think, at least 3 more podcasts to go after this one, because the next one, we are going to watch the documentary about Deep Space Nine, which was called...
Yes, it was called What We Left Behind.
Okay, so you can watch that one this week, and then next week we will talk about that. And then after that, we will do a full series wrap-up.
Yes.
And we're hoping to get Atiba Royster on with us for that. And then finally, I think as we mentioned before, we're going to go back to the beginning, watch the pilot, Emissary, and listen to our first podcast so that we can talk about sort of how far we've come. Maybe mostly me, how far I've come in my opinions of the show, and sort of rebinge ourselves a little bit just at the beginning of the pod. We're not going to go through the whole thing.
No, we're not going to do a scene by scene of scene by scene.
No. And then we will likely take a little break and return in January with our newly branded podcast just called ReBingeIT, where we will be watching Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time.
And hopefully when Prodigy comes back, it will all be in there as well.
Oh, that's big news since the last time we recorded that Prodigy is coming to Netflix.
Yeah, by the time this airs, it'll be old news.
Okay. All right, well, before we start on the season wrap-up, is there anything to say about last week's podcast, which was the finale?
No, it was perfect and extremely long.
Oh my gosh, we recorded for, 3 hours in the end?
3.5.
Oh, it was quite long, quite an edit. Did we cover everything? I know you're still actively editing it, but did we get it all covered?
I have a couple of things I want to bring up.
Oh, no.
Is that a surprise?
Kind of. I mean, we did talk about it until we both about dropped. But sure, what do you got?
Yeah, I think actually that episode ended where one of us passed out in the podcast booth.
Yeah, we just said, that's it. It's over.
Okay, first thing. The loyalty of Weyoun. Do you remember Evil Founder said Weyoun was the only solid she could ever trust?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when Weyoun hid the faulty Weyoun from her? Almost got Odo killed? And hid it from her?
Well, she doesn't know that.
Exactly.
So
she's saying how much she trusts this person who's untrustworthy and is still hiding things from her.
Well, as far as she's concerned, he's trustworthy because she doesn't know that happened.
Which I think is kind of the irony of it.
Agreed.
I don't think they're even fully aware of what's going on.
Look, when you're afraid of your boss, you don't tell them things, which is why it's terrible to be that kind of boss.
Yeah.
And that is spoken from absolute experience.
That's a very good point.
That's why it's terrible to yell at your subordinates, because then they aren't going to tell you the truth.
The second thing is Odo and his motivation to return to the link. I think an important thing Odo can do when he returns is the message, a very harsh message, that you were almost all wiped out because of your attitude and behavior. Yeah. And if it happened once, it can happen again. And the only reason we weren't wiped out was that somebody in the Federation actually put themselves on the line to find a cure. If it wasn't for them, you'd all be dead.
Yeah, 2 people risked their lives to save Odo.
Even though the founders were an enemy.
And the founders would have never done it the other way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think there's an important message to them. This is going to happen to you eventually. You dodged a bullet. It can't go on forever.
But I still say this was potentially part of the reason why they sent the babies out in the first place.
Yeah.
You got to bring us back some new knowledge to help us evolve.
Maybe that's actually accidental. It was more of we need to find new races we can conquer and new threats.
Maybe.
And Odo, because the prophets changed him, people can argue about that, came back as something more. They didn't intend this to happen.
Well, I feel like, yes, it could be accidental, but it also could have been part of their plan, that the only way they ever were going to evolve is if new ideas came into the mix. At the same time, when you talk to the evil changeling woman, she didn't want to evolve. She didn't think that the solids could teach them anything.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
They still sent them out.
Could this have been done behind her back?
No, she knew about it.
Yeah.
So we'll just never know the answer to that question of was it the intent or was it a happy accident?
Yeah. I go with happy accident.
Well, either way.
Well, not to happy for Kira.
Or for all the people they killed.
Well, the future people they won't kill.
Yeah, that's who it's happy for.
And that wraps up even more overanalysis.
Oh my God. All right, so then let's move on to our highest and lowest rated episodes of season 7.
So, would you like to start, Kim?
I think we both grouped the first 2 episodes of the season and the last 2 episodes of the season together as one episode.
Yeah.
Just because it made sense to not split them up.
Right. Agreed.
So I start at number 10 then, and my number 10 of the best episodes of the season is When It Rains.
Oh.
I believe that was the episode where we had the shocker about Odo at the end.
Yep.
Even though I'm not sure the entire episode is that great, that shock at the end, didn't see it coming, made me gasp. So makes that episode pretty memorable.
You did really like how that was so shocking and Star Trek really surprising you.
Yeah, it got me.
Pretty good.
So number 9 for me is Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
Oh.
Which was a lighthearted baseball episode.
Yep.
Quite different, right, from how the show ended. I mean, it was a little bit goofy, but I thought it was a fun episode, and I think we both liked it.
Yes.
8 is Treachery, Fate, and the Great River.
Oh.
That was the one you were just referring to with Wei Yun and Odo trying to escape in a shuttle.
Yep.
Number 7, Strange Bedfellows.
Oh, really?
And following that, number 6 is The Changing Face of Evil. So that the sort of beginning of the Kai Wynn, Ducatas of Bajoran story sort of really getting going.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my 7 and 6.
The prelude to the final arc of Ducat and Wynn.
And Cisco. Those are my 5.
Okay.
What are your bottom top 5?
Okay.
Yeah.
Starting at number 10, A Field of Fire.
What? Wow. That's the one with Ezri and...
I really liked the idea of Ezri struggling with Duran.
Right.
Considering how the previous 2 hosts had tried to cover him up, to bury this secret. And actually seeing what Duran was really like. And especially Ezri being able to portray this Trill that hadn't had the training. And as I said before, when she first appeared, more like a natural Trill of having to cope with these things without years of preparation. So I actually enjoyed that episode.
Well, we are wildly different on that episode, but that's, I mean, that's your prerogative.
Number 9.
Yep.
Covenant. I think it shows at its heart how much of a predatory deviant Ducat is.
Yeah.
And I found the idea of a whole Par-Wraith cult pretty intriguing.
Yeah, that was a great episode, if for no other reason than how funny it was when the baby came out and it was a Cardassian.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
I remember how much you laughed at that.
Oh, I loved that moment. Yeah. Okay.
Next episode, Inter Arma Enim Sealant Legis.
The Latin one.
I liked it because as a spy episode, it shows really the complexity of Sloane's machinations and his intrigue within intrigue. And it also showed, I think, how a little too tolerant or a little too friendly towards the behavior of Section 31 that Starfleet admirals are.
I mean, it was certainly the best Sloane episode. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
All right. That's a pretty good one.
Number 7, It's Only a Paper Moon.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think it's an interesting attempt to address veterans' PTSD and the mental trauma that's caused by combat. And I thought that was a nice Star Trek way of dealing with what is a real world complex issue.
Oh, It's Only a Paper Moon just falls outside of my top 10.
Oh.
I agree with everything you said, and I actually think Aaron Eisenberg is tremendous in that episode.
Yes.
But I also was a little disappointed in the portrayal of real counseling in the future and how, they're still telling Noggets in his head and, there was no evolution there, which you would hope there would be some. But anyway, it was a good episode.
Yeah. Number 6, The Dogs of War, What You Leave Behind. It's the culmination of the series. It's great, but at the same time, it's the end of a series I really enjoyed, and I can't give it higher than that.
Because it was the end?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Kim, over to your top 5.
So it's really top 7. because the two that we put together are both in my top 5. So it's a little cheat.
Okay.
So my number 5 is the combination of the first 2 episodes of the season, Image in the Sand and Shadows and Symbols. I thought it was a really good kickoff to the season.
Yep.
We were introduced to Sarah Sisko. We were introduced to, or we weren't introduced to, but we were reintroduced to Benny, which was such a surprise at the end of that little 2-season arc. And we had our first episodes with Esri. And before her only goal in life was to have a boyfriend. So I think there was a lot of good stuff. We also had Brock Peters, who's always very good as Grandpa Joe.
Oh, yes. There was some great performances by him.
Yes. And there's even some Jake in those 2 episodes. And we pretty much don't see Jake ever again in the rest of the season. Those 2 are my 5.
Yeah, Jake was so lightly used at the end of the season.
Yeah. My number 4 is Covenant. For all of the reasons that you said, I thought that was such an awesome episode. It's funny when you said it was, in the bottom 5 of your top 10. I was like, wait, where's Covenant? And I went, oh yeah, it's in my top 5. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. To me, that was very much a contained Star Trek episode, and it just showed so many cracks in Ducat's plans and the way that he wanted to be looked at. And on top of that, he had that little thing where he was like, oh, I'm the Power Wraith's emissary, which was all he wanted in life, was to be the equal to Benjamin Sisko.
Well, remember the awesome mural?
Oh, yes.
And he's this savior figure.
Yes. Cardassian Jesus.
Yeah.
My number 3 is the 2-episode combination of the finale. So Dogs of War and What You Leave Behind.
Yep.
I agree it was a little hard to figure out exactly where to put it in here because it's hard to compare all of the things that go on in those episodes with episodes like Covenant, for an example.
Yeah.
I did think it was a strong finish, even though I was disappointed in how we wrapped up some characters, and I was disappointed with a few loose ends, like the lack of closing the loop with Jake and Sisko, I thought was their biggest mistake.
Agreed.
They opened with that relationship, and they did not close it, and I didn't like that. But it's still, all the stuff that happened with Kira, the way that Odo went out, all those things were incredible. That's why it's in my top 5. Number 2 for me is Tacking Into the Wind.
Oh.
That is one of those episodes in the final section, but it's so good. It's so pivotal.
Yeah.
This, just in terms of how we record and how we release, this is the episode we released today. And I was listening to it back, to make sure that the file was okay. And at the end, I'm like, this is an incredible episode. And it's true.
It really is.
It's so good because, again, we're getting that Kira as the hero. And I talk quite a bit in that episode about the evolution of Kira and how much I've appreciated her as a female character. But there's so many other things that go on in that episode as well. And we just sort of really kick into gear towards the finale.
Worf and Gowron.
Even though I knew Worf was going to kill Gowron somewhere along the way, I didn't know how it was going to happen, and I didn't know that Martok was going to be Chancellor. Of course, Martok is my all-time favorite Klingon, so I'm very happy to see him, being in charge. So yeah, for all those reasons, that's my number 2.
Okay, I'm excited about this one. I have no idea what it will be.
You have no idea?
No.
You have no idea that my number 1 is going to be Once More Unto the Breach.
Oh,
I loved that episode. I could watch it 100 times. It's almost like that's the episode that made me appreciate Klingons.
Really?
Because I think if we go back and listen to some of the early episodes, I was like, I don't know about Klingons. I mean, they're loud. They probably smell. They like to butt each other's heads. They're bleeding all the time. It's not my favorite thing. And I wasn't sure the Klingons made sense. This one, just on top of John Kalikos, who plays Cord, his performance, and also Martog's performance, was almost like the validation of the Klingon story to me.
Yeah.
On top of it, they added nuance.
Oh, completely.
And this is a thing I haven't appreciated about in the early days about the Cardassians and about the Klingons, is there wasn't enough nuance. But here, if you look at why Martog was so upset, right? Why he was mad and why he didn't want Kor on his ship, that is a beautiful, nuanced story that we didn't usually get in Klingon episodes.
That is a really good list, Cam.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, let's hear your top 5.
Okay, my top 5. And number 5, Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
Nice.
Because you'd introduced me to baseball. And I think as someone who was introduced to it, I think this is a really fun episode. And I think Sisko is great in it. And there's that moment, and we talked about this, where he realizes he's being over the top. And it's supposed to be fun. and he puts Rom in. That I thought was a great moment. Thoroughly enjoyable episode.
Even though the story with the Vulcan is maybe a little shaky.
Yeah.
Just, a little bit hard to swallow. But I thought it was a good way to introduce this story. And we'd almost been begging for a baseball episode, considering how much we talk about baseball in, in the early seasons. So, yeah, that was good.
And number 4, Treachery, Fate, and the Great River. The humor in Nog using his Ferengi upbringing to really positive effect, to actually be helpful within Starfleet.
Right.
Great story idea. And the history of the Vorta. And this Wayun showing how they potentially have actually been stunted by the Founders.
Right.
The Vorta have more potential. They have the possibility of empathy, where he says about how Odo can change the Dominion. They can make it something new, and still has that absolute deference to the Founders, which is terrible, but shows that there's potential for the Vorta to become more.
Yeah, we did learn a lot in that episode. It was very good. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very enjoyable. Number 3, once more Unto the Breach.
Nice.
The exposition of Martog's background and the flaws within this nobility-based Klingon hierarchy.
Oh, yeah, we'd never heard that before. It was so great.
Yes. And this ties into my idea of how the Klingons, when Martog's telling Worf the story and the background and things, he's very calm. It's well acted. Mm-hmm. It's this very measured conversation. And that contrasts so much to when they're in the meetings with other Klingons and they're being just melodramatic and they're being over the top. And I think this is the episode where you really get such a great feeling for the difference between the public and the private Klingon because of how their society works.
Right.
And then the 2 old guys, Kor and Martog's assistant or PA.
Oh, yeah.
That these are older warriors. What happens to these old warriors? And John Colicchio, the way he portrays this aging, starting to get frail Kor,
right,
and the last great battle. This is the definition of a Klingon legend. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's the birth of a legend as well.
Right.
I would say, yeah.
Number 2, Tacking into the Wind.
Oh, same as my number 2.
Yes. Kira and the Resistance, Garon and Worf. Worf is, in a lot of ways, the most interesting Klingon. He sits between 2 different worlds. He's defeated a Chancellor in combat. In theory, he was briefly the Chancellor before he gave it to Martog. He's held the Sword of Kahless. This guy is awesome, even if a little preachy. Number 1, Image in the Sand, Shadows and Symbols. This is an episode I can still watch and just think it's fantastic. I loved the introduction of Ezri, even if the writing later on just couldn't figure out what to do with it, which was tragic. The reappearance of Benny.
Yeah, that was such a surprise.
Right. The last ditch by the power race to derail Sisko and what was going to happen to them. And then Jake and Brock Peters tiptoeing around Sisko, who is having these problems. So well acted, so well put together. I remember watching this for the first time and just being blown away by the episode. I was like, This is why I watch Deep Space Nine. Still true today.
Okay.
So that is my top 10.
So it seems like my top 5 and your top 5 are pretty similar. At least all of my top 5 are in your top 10 and all of your 5 are in my top 10. So at least close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although the bottom part of your top 5 is quite different, which we will come on to as we move over to the least favorite episodes.
So we only do 5, and 5 is the
least worst,
and 1 is the worst over the worst.
Yes. Okay.
Number 5, least worst, Bada Bing, Bada Bang.
Mm-hmm.
Too much Vic. The saving grace was the slow motion scene where they're all in costume. Sisko and Miles look amazing.
Agreed.
Number 4, Prodigal Daughter. A little bit meh.
Yeah.
Number 3, The Emperor's New Cloak. A swing and a miss. A lot of potential, kind of failed to deliver on it.
Yeah.
Although Pirate Ezri did look freaking amazing.
Oh, she did. I forgot about that in the best hair section.
Number 2, Chrysalis. Julian is just creepy. After thinking about what happened in the last episode, my opinion of the character of Julian has just gone down through the rewatching. I'm sure you'll have a comment on this, Kim.
Yeah. I've had so many comments on Julian throughout the 176 or whatever it is episodes.
And number 1, worst of the worst, the Siege of AR 558.
I knew you were going to say that. I'd already marked it on my list before you said it.
Miserable. Just miserable.
Yeah.
I think this is the one that made me feel Sisko was phoning in some performances. Even back in the day, I hated this episode. And it has not improved over time.
No, it really hasn't. That episode really did not do it for us. We certainly got a lot of emails from people saying, this is my favorite episode. I can't believe you didn't like it. But it just didn't work for us.
No.
Yeah. But that one does not appear in my bottom 5. It's just outside of it. It's actually in the bottom 6, but not the bottom 5. So my bottom 5 is very similar to yours.
Oh, okay.
Slightly different order, and then one completely different.
Oh, okay.
So
Go.
My number 5 was Prodigal Daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you said it. It was just kind of a lame episode. It felt very forced, in order to get to the point that they wanted to get to. We did get some emails about that from I know there was at least one person who said they really liked this episode for a very personal, specific reason. And I actually think that's in our email notes, so we'll probably get there. But my number 4 is from your top 10, and that's Field of Fire.
Oh, really?
I did not like that episode. I thought it was ridiculous that she never told, this is the one where Duran comes out of the mind of Ezri, right? Yeah. And she interacts with him. And I just thought it was weird that she never told Sisko about it. She never told anyone about it. And that nobody seemed concerned at the end that she actually had a gun and was shooting people through walls. She shouldn't have even had access to that, but she did. I didn't buy it.
Okay.
So then my number 3 is Chrysalis. And yeah, for all the reasons you said, just putting Julian's creepiness on display was not cool. And the fact that we just never
addressed how he's a predator?
Well, yes, but also we didn't address the Chrysalis part of her turning into the butterfly. And really, although that's a little bit insulting, she was actually just finally getting some agency back in her own life and being able to live a life. And here Julian thought, I'll just keep you here. And we didn't address the fact that was a bad thing.
Yes.
Because it would stunt her and wasn't giving her the opportunity. We just never even talked about it. And I just didn't like that episode.
Do you want to know what I would do with that character?
What's up?
In Deep Space Nine, The Next Generation, set many years after these events, she'd be running Section 31. She's genetically engineered like Sloane.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Have her return as, turns out I'm really good at this.
That would have been great, actually, to take that direction. But we can't do that. It's a woman. She doesn't know how to run things. Number 2 is Bada Bing, Bada Bang. And I mean, we talked a lot about it at the moment. It just was really a terrible episode, apart from the slow motion scene. That was just the coolest scene of all of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Loved Mars's hat.
And then the most disappointing thing to me is yet another Mirror episode at the absolute bottom of my list, which is The Emperor's New Cloak. I want to like the Mirror episodes because I love them in Discovery. They're so good in Discovery, but I think it's set the bar too high, or at least it's set the bar in a different place. Yeah. They're just endlessly weird in this show and a little insulting, and I don't like it. So yeah, to me, that's the worst episode of the season.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to guest stars.
This is the Louise Fletcher Award?
Yes. So I gave you 2 different lists for the Louise Fletcher Award. One is the sort of limited role guest stars, which is as many as 3 episodes of appearances. So like James Otis as Solbor, I think he's in 3 episodes. Yeah. And then the other list is the recurring guest stars, the Casey Biggs as Damar, who's in several episodes. Jeffrey Combs obviously is in many episodes. Yeah. Louise Fletcher is in there, but she wins anyway, so she doesn't count.
Yeah, that's why it's her award.
That's right. So who gets your Louise Fletcher Award for the limited role guest star?
John Colicos. His portrayal of Kor, fabulous yet again.
Super hard to argue with that. I think John Colicos as Kor in Once More Into the Breach is great. I think this is his best appearance. Yeah. I mean, he's been on the show a few times. I mean, he was good in The Sword of Kalis as well. And he was good in Blood Oath, but this was by far his best performance. And he was given more to do here in terms of emotional range.
And I think that episode grew on me as well, because I'm a lot older than I was when this came out originally. And I can kind of relate to the character. So I think his performance really speaks to me.
Okay. I would give honorable mention to two others, which is Gregory Wagrowski. Sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly, but that's Captain Solak, the Vulcan, in Take Me Out to Holosuite. I thought he was pretty good as a Vulcan.
Yes.
And then also John Vickery, who played Rusat. He was pretty good too.
That's true.
But John Colicos is easily the winner of the Louise Fletcher Award here.
I think John Vickery managed to bring out that sort of puffery of the
Cardassian-ness.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I thought he was good.
For a guy who had such a limited role, getting a handle on it like that, impressive.
Agreed. All right, then, for recurring guest stars, who wins the Louise Fletcher Award?
That's like asking, which of your children is your favorite? Wow. The problem is, we have J.G. Hertzler, Jeffrey Combs, and Casey Biggs, as well as Salome Jens.
Yep.
I think it has to go to J.G. Hertzler, although everyone else is so close. Hertzler just managed to push it over the edge because he also played Lars.
Right.
I think he managed to bring out that absolute founder arrogance that sort of defines how they view the solids.
Right.
But all the others, great performances as well. I mean, Combs is so good playing Weyoun and playing Weyouns differently as well.
And Brunt as well in this season. Well, I agree. J.G. Hertzler is the winner of the Louise Fletcher Award for season 7. And I would give it to him for 3 reasons. Yeah. The third reason is because he played a whole different character like Jeffrey Combs does, right? He played Laz, and he was really good, and he was unrecognizable in that role.
Right.
He couldn't disguise his voice, but he still managed to play a completely different, like a very measured, quiet character versus the bombacity of the Klingon he normally plays.
Right.
The second reason, I would say, was for the scene in the finale when he's trying to do the toast of blood wine over the bodies of the Cardassians, and the two from Starfleet are like, we're not drinking over these dead bodies. And he remained a Klingon in that moment, and he just kind of went, humans.
Right.
And just continued to do it. Yeah. And I thought that was such a great moment for a Klingon. And then the number one reason why I give it to him is for his performance in Once More Unto the Breach. He's just great in that episode.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't even have the biggest part, I don't think, but he's really good.
Agreed.
It was tough for me to not give it to Casey Biggs or Salome Jens. Yeah. And the reason I didn't give it to Salome Jens, even though she's flawless in that role as the evil changeling, but it's a pretty small part in this season. And she appeared a bit more earlier. Yeah. And, here she just had a few scenes here and there. She was quite effective, but it's hard to compare her to what J.G. Hertzler did.
Right.
And Casey Biggs, kind of a similar difference, but I really thought the transition of Damar from sort of hopeless drunk to being the person to save Cardassia, I thought that was a really great, believable transition. And by the end, I wanted to see more of him. That is pretty telling that he was able to make that transition.
Oh, yeah.
But still not enough meat as there was with Hertzler.
Casey Biggs managed to give Damar some depth.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know if they planned that when Damar first appeared, but in a limited time, he managed to flesh out this character.
Agreed. Okay, let's go on to best plot lines. What was your best plot line?
Too many to choose from. You go first.
Okay. I picked the changelings getting sick. Although I didn't completely like the resolution and how we had to go into Sloane's head and whatever, and then Julian cured him in 5 seconds. That was a little dopey, but I think it triggered so many interesting things in the story, including what Odo had to do in the end to not just to save them, but to realize that's the reason he needed to go into the Great Link. So I picked that as the best plotline of season 7.
Oh, I think my favorite plotline is Image in the Sand because of this idea that these events were set in place potentially millennia ago. And Sisko with Dax finding this box. And I really liked how you saw this almost obsessed Sisko.
Right.
And the idea that the orb of the emissaries could cast out Costamogen. I think I really like that as a very pure science fiction storyline.
Okay. How about worst plotline?
AR-558.
Okay.
And the irony, I think, of AR-558 is how Strange New Worlds did the episode dealing with Dr. Mbenga in a combat situation, and how that felt so much better.
Yeah, it put it to shame.
Yeah, the intensity, the emotion expressed by Mbenga, that felt like much more of a rounded episode and was telling much more of a story than 558, which felt like an old World War II propaganda movie. gosh, we got to go and win this war.
Okay, well, I had two in mind. The first one is Ezri needs a boyfriend. It's just such a missed opportunity to explore the depths of difficulty in dealing with the particular situation, and instead just almost playing it for laughs and then just to get Julian a boyfriend at the end, or a girlfriend at the end. It's just dumb. And then I would also say that the war went on too long.
Oh, yeah.
There were some really good concentrated episodes about it, like Tacking Into the Wind, right? Yeah. We both had that, I think, as our number 2. But even though I know war would be long and it would be difficult and it was probably shorter than it should have been in terms of reality, but it doesn't really fit into my Star Trek ideals and the reason that I watch Star Trek. Yeah. And so there were too many hopeless moments about it, and I didn't like it. Too much war.
Well, there was also the classic Star Trek trope of the enemy turning up every now and then with a super weapon that can destroy everything.
Yeah.
And then them having to back off.
Yeah.
I accept that as part of Star Trek writing, but it is a little bit, is that the best way you can do it?
Yeah. And the way they had to sort of give up on some of the things that they set earlier with the Jem'Hadar.
Oh, yes.
That was a little weak, like what happened to the Ketracel White. We never talked about that again.
Yep.
Oh, and how the Jem'Hadar could just walk through force fields and their ships were invisible. And it's just,
How they could cloak themselves really easily.
Yeah. So let's go on to the most Star Trek thing to happen in the season.
Okay. What you leave behind. At the end of this war, the Federation doesn't seek revenge, or it doesn't seek conquest of the Dominion. It basically just wants justice, and I think just wants to stop them being this aggressive power. It's going back to, we just want things to be peaceful. That, to me, is the most Star Trek concept.
Well, I agree with that, except for the fact that there was some complicity in the genocide.
And this falls under the flaws of the admirals and Section 31. I think they repeatedly show themselves to be untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I had for mine that the most Star Trek thing to happen was that the Federation wins the war and they purposely don't kill the changeling. They sign a document with her as if that means something and then take her into custody. So that seemed very Star Trek-y. Also, I mentioned it before, but the Ross and Sisko not wanting to toast Martog over the bodies of the Cardassians, that was also quite a Star Trek moment, I thought. That would have been quite wrong.
Oh, that's just because they're humans.
Yeah. Humans. What about the least Star Trek thing to happen?
Inter arma enim sealant legis. Picard would have had a meltdown if you told him about this.
Yeah. Well, Section 31 would have caused Picard to melt down.
He would have been storming Starfleet HQ over this. I think the whole concept of Section 31 is rabidly anti-Federation. And I think the captains and the officers and the members of Starfleet of good standing would utterly oppose the creation, the use of Section 31. That isn't to say an intelligence organization isn't needed, but this organization sitting outside of normal channels of control, I would see people like Picard looking at it as a problem.
Yeah, how can you not regulate it and still think it's okay? Yeah, agreed.
Counter that with Sisko and Under the Pale Moonlight. That was one captain doing something in a given situation that he thought was the right thing and thought he could live with. It's not an institutional approach to how you solve problems. And Section 31, that kind of thing is.
I think I argued at the end of In the Pale Moonlight that that was a very Star Trek thing to do. Even though people seemed, for some reason, they think it wasn't. I really felt like the captain bending the rules as much as he did to do the right thing is pretty normal. I mean, Janeway did it, Picard did it, they all do it.
I might not have expressed it correctly, but yes, exactly.
I mean, the difference, I guess, of causing the death of some people, right, which is what happened. But that wasn't what he had intended. He didn't directly do it.
Right.
But that felt like a very Star Trek thing to me. So my least Star Trek thing to have happened, two things. One was letting Sloane die and just not being even slightly concerned about it or the consequences of it. That was completely ridiculous. It made no sense for Julian to be that way. It made no sense for Sisko to be that way.
Yeah.
I didn't buy that as being a Star Trek moment on the show.
I can see that.
And then the other one is a little bit different, which is that at the end of the series, the captain was gone. That's never happened before in Star Trek. And I think even up to this point, the captain had always had the last line at the end of the series, but he was gone. He was gone a couple scenes before the show ended.
Right.
He was off in the wormhole. So that, to me, was a little bit different from what maybe would have been expected in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because he abandoned his kid, his 2 kids.
And his wife.
I mean, at least he talked to her, but still abandoned her. Doesn't feel very Star Trek.
I'm going to quote Atiba here. The prophets are jerks, guys.
The prophets are jerks, guys. It's so true. Let's move on to the performances of the main characters, or the main actors, I guess, on the show. So do you have... I mean, I put some categories in here, but I feel like we can do whatever we want here. So do you have particular performances you want to call out of the main cast?
Yes. Avery and Nana were great. I may lean towards Nana just because of how good Kira was at the end.
Yes.
I'm going to give it to her. Season overall, Nana Vista.
She's my overall as well. In some of the individual episodes, I thought Aaron Eisenberg was great, and It's Only a Paper Moon.
Yes.
But, I mean, he's in a couple of episodes this season, so he couldn't win the overall. And I would also say that there were a couple of times where Rene Auberjonois was really good. He was good in Chimera, and
Agreed.
He was also good at the end when he was, deciding to join the Great Link. Anything under worst performances?
Julian, only because the writing is so bad. I don't think Siddiq really got great material, and I don't think they really knew quite how to write the character or the direction they wanted. Yeah. It seems like they were all over the place. It was almost like pick one thing and stick with it. And what I thought was some earlier great performances, he just seemed to get bad material, which resulted in a character who, rewatching it, I found was unlikable.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like some of the Worf Esri stories were like that. They were just written so badly. It's hard to criticize the actors when they can't do a believable performance from something that is unbelievable.
Well, I'll give my opinion on Esri.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole DeBoer did unbelievable work with some really crappy material.
Yeah, she was very good. I agree.
I really liked Esri, and I liked some of the concepts with Esri. And it's a shame they couldn't build on those things. And the last 4 episodes, it was like, oh, it's Julian's girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, they started so strongly leaning into her, and then they went, we're done.
Yeah, I would love to have seen a better written Worf-Esri relationship between her basically turning into Jadzia and then realizing she's not Jadzia. The whole concept of the Trills suffering from these problems of memories overlapping.
Right.
But they kind of did that at the very end, but no.
Kind of, but not really. You wrote a better version of it as we talked about it. I don't actually have anything different in my overall. I mean, I've been complaining since the beginning. I don't think Siddiq is a great actor, at least on this show. So I don't think he's great. He's the weakest of all of them.
Yeah.
And my one complaint here in season 7 is we're very light on Miles episodes. So we don't have a lot of examples to go on for him. So yeah, I don't actually have a name in my season overall worst performances.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move quickly to costumes and hair.
Okay. I feel this season was extraordinarily light. In fact, the whole show over time seems to have moved away from intricate makeup, intricate aliens, costumes, different looking creatures. I assume because they transferred budget into these big battle sequences and lots of ships and SFX shots in space. And there didn't seem to even be that much Odo changing as well. So we sort of lost a lot of these small things. And I think that was a loss. I used to love it when we'd watch and see odd-looking creatures or really intricate-looking makeup on a particular alien. Remember the alien who tried to assassinate Garak and had a fantastic look? I think I only made one comment about a good-looking alien makeup.
And maybe it was Laz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the money would have come out of alien makeup and gone into the effects for the space battles. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that we have a lot more constant presence of Klingons and Cardassians in this season. So that's maybe where the budget was going or where the time was going, was in dealing with all the normal characters who were part of every day instead of the sort of creature of the week with one single Klingon on the ship, for example.
Right.
Instead, we have multiple Klingons every episode and multiple Cardassians.
Half a dozen Cardassians and Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, and the Jem'Hadar. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. So it ended up being focused into a small number of very complex characters. Yeah.
Right. We did have Laz, though. That was a pretty good covering of J.G. Hertzler as a different character. I also thought the effects on the changelings of the sickness was pretty effective between Odo and the evil changeling.
Yes. Odo's final appearance when he was falling apart, that looked disturbing. It was so well done.
Yeah. And the best hair of the season to me was Ezri in the Mirrorverse.
Oh, yeah.
Even though that's my least favorite episode, she looked amazing.
Yeah, if we talk about hair and costumes, it has to go to Pirate Ezri. Absolutely outstanding.
And Kira looked so good in the Starfleet uniform. I was trying to think why. What was so great about her in the Starfleet uniform? And I think because you really feel at this point like Kira is a part of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And you're so used to the characters being in those uniforms. And when she put it on, I was like, yeah, obviously, that's what she should be wearing. So that worked too.
I think it had more form and substance than the one-piece uniform she was in before.
The Bajoran uniform?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, maybe the color worked a little bit better on her. But yeah, maybe the fact that there was a jacket. And then under worst hair and or costume, I don't know if I put this on your spreadsheet, but I just put, and why is it Kira with her hair? Kira's hair is the worst.
You did not like the hair this season.
It's the worst
did you?
in this season, no. And what's funny is I Googled Kira Nerys hairstyles, and you get quite an eyeful when you do that. It didn't necessarily start off great either, but it changes so much. It's very funny to look at that. But anyway, yeah, to me, Kira worst hair of the entire season.
Mars did have a couple of scruffy hair looks.
He did. I mean, there was a lot of bad hair in this season. I'm just going to blame the late 90s.
Ah, okay. Cisco had the best overall hair for the season.
None. But do you have anything else in this category?
I do not.
Okay. That wraps up all of our special categories. So we will just finish off with some emails.
Okay.
We get a lot of emails, and we agreed last season we weren't going to read them all because that just got us deep into trouble. There's no way we could read them all. I did go through them over the weekend, and I took some notes on some of them. So do you want to go through that list first, or do you want to read our favorite email?
This is from Joyce, and she writes, "Hello, fabulous hosts. Warning, long email, but no spoilers."
Too late for spoilers now.
Yeah, we've got to the end of the show. The two of you have effectively set an impossibly high bar for Star Trek podcasts for me. Too many great things, so I'm not going to name them all. Thank you. Your pods are like an episode of Prodigy. Short, but so fully packed. The recaps are funny, even for the somber episodes. I'm also often amazed how you manage to keep track of the tiny details that happened in seasons back. Women in the Future section, which I can't help but cheer every time and simultaneously annoyed at, for so many offenses are still found in current TV movies. Although I think a musical Star Trek episode would be jumping the shark. Actually, can it really be jumping the shark if the property's been around for 60 years? You really had me laughing out loud in public listening to your pitch for a Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the musical.
I was ahead of my time.
Yeah, you were. I agree with Kim that Bashir is the character I found the most frustrating in DS9, especially post-genetic modification reveal, and could not understand what was likable about him most of the time. My convoluted conspiracy theory is that because many of us ship him with Garrick, and we love Garrick, so by extension, the fandom like him, in the way that people like Chakotay because of Janeway. By the way, I look forward to finding out why Kim has no patience for him.
Oh, you'll learn. It'll come up.
Finally, perhaps more so than Deep Space Nine ReBinge, big thanks to you both for the Prodigy pod. It's a shame so many Trek fans immediately dismissed it because it was nominally targeted for a younger audience. They're sleeping on this gem. Your podcast really helped satisfy my need to overanalyze the show and express all the Janeway love. I'm a fan whose favorite captain is, whichever show I'm watching, rewatching at the time. But if there's a crisis, I ride or die with Janeway. Well, yeah, because Janeway would ride or die with you.
She would.
I've said it a million times. You're of hell. Once again, thank you for the quality pods. I look forward to the rest of Deep Space Nine and Prodigy Season 2 later this year. Yours, audibly delighted forever, Joyce. Thank you, Joyce. That was a really fun email.
One of many just great emails. And to be fair, Joyce did write back in August after the Strange New Worlds musical episode. And she said, just want to say that I would like to retract my statement that musical Star Trek would be jumping the shark. It's great.
That episode was fantastic. And I absolutely love the Nurse Chapel song.
You did.
That whole musical piece, awesome.
I love the beginning. The opening song is my favorite. The status report.
I believe the intermix chamber is stable.
The intermix chamber and containment fields are stable. I'll get to the warp core and assess its status when I'm able, or assess its state when I'm able.
How many times have you listened to that soundtrack?
Oh, 1,000. 1,000. I'll keep listening to it. Okay, let me run through some of our other emails, just because we appreciate them, so want to call them out.
Yes, thank you to everyone who has sent emails. We've received some fantastic sets of over-analysis.
Oh, some so long and complicated. It's been great.
Yeah.
Great email from Lauren, who called us a cute couple, so I appreciated that, and said that we know more about Star Trek than the guys who do the Delta Flyer podcast, which is pretty funny, because it's the actors who play Paris and Harry Kim.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, I think until modern Star Trek, the actors didn't know a lot about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Also, Lauren told us that she is hard of hearing and the quality of our podcast is such that she can fully follow what we say. So I'm really happy to hear that. Lauren was also the person who told us about Nana Visitor and the squeaking of her Mirrorverse costume.
Clubbing Kira outfit. That's still a classic.
It's very funny. We had so many overanalysis emails. I found a couple that I had missed replying to just yesterday, and I replied and apologized, but that inbox is just jammed, so it's hard to not accidentally miss a few here and there. So if I missed you, please email me again. I'll probably catch you the second time.
Yeah, we try and get back to everyone.
We had a great email from Anne who asked us to stop picking on Vic. And I feel like we toned it down a bit after the It's Only a Paper Moon episode, but he was never going to be something we liked. So sorry, Anne.
In the last episode, I only commented about the 3 pallies.
On the pally, yeah. We had a few emails from Megan M., who was not caught up with the current episodes, and she asked if she should jump ahead or just keep going through the old episodes. I'm a completist, and you must start at the beginning, and you must not ever skip anything.
And you must keep going.
But seriously, listen to it how you want.
Oh, yeah. It's entirely up to you how you listen to it, but listen to all of them. Megan
is one of the many people who have enjoyed me blathering on about leadership, a topic that I just can't avoid. In fact, I have a training coming up that I have to give, so it's even worse right now. Rick told us the podcast about Covenant was perfect. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Rick.
Dave told us he agreed with our assessment of AR 558.
Yay.
So there you go. There was your person who agreed with you.
It wasn't just me. I feel validated now.
Well, like statistical probabilities, we had emails that agreed and emails that disagreed with our take, but Dave came down hard on your side because I think he said he just hated that episode. He also said that the last 9 episodes of the show all meld into one, so he doesn't know how you would rank them separately. And I think we agreed with that. It was a challenge at the end.
It really is.
Parker talked about the episode Prodigal Daughter. This is the one I mentioned earlier. And how they see it as analogous to the trans experience and the complicated family relationships that occur.
Yeah.
Specifically, they said that parents often don't recognize how damaged their relationships with their children are until tragedy strikes. That's really interesting, yeah.
That's a good summary of that episode.
And Parker also said the Covenant episode was perfect. We should go back and listen to that one. That must have been a good one.
I just remember how much you laughed when we saw the baby.
Oh, God, it was so funny. Charlie likes it when we talk about hair and costumes. We did that more at the beginning, I think, of the series. Yeah. Maybe for all the reasons we just talked about, maybe because of budgetary reasons.
Yeah, that was something I really liked with the show. And I wish they'd been able to keep that level of just all these different races coming through the station.
Charlie agrees with James's theory about Odo being more evolved because of the prophets or perhaps wormhole radiation.
Thank you.
I still think it's because of Starfleet's influence on him.
That's a very Trek approach there.
Well, it's a leadership thing. Tyler says all podcasts should do a section like Women in the Future. Yeah. And then Tyler proceeded to give an over-analysis on a bunch of episodes. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. That was great. Thank you.
The one episode from this season in the analysis list was Treachery, Faith in the Great River. And Tyler said, we asked, why would Weyoun believe Damar would keep his secret? And Tyler's theory is that Cardassians are about self-preservation. And if that secret got out, Damar would also be in jeopardy.
Oh.
So that's legit.
That is totally legit. If he couldn't point the finger at someone else, Cardassians have no idea what to do.
And then Callum said he loves the pod. And I just wanted to mention Callum because I love his name. Also, he was just on The Visitor when he sent that email, so he's not going to hear this for a while. Unless he's like that person who joined on Facebook and had listened to 170 episodes in 30 days.
That was super impressive.
That is some dedication. Wait, okay, we've been recording for a long time. It's really hot in the podcast booth, so I think I'm going to say the mailbag is closed.
Well, you did just get some fans in the podcast booth.
I did, but it's not helping. It's getting really hot in here. Just one quick thing, though, before we go, because Jeff X-Force11 always sends us some audio feedback, and he's the only one who does.
That's
so
true.
I just want to play his thoughts on Season 7.
Okay.
Well, hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff X-Force11 giving my feedback about the final season of Deep Space Nine. Now, as we are watching, we've got about 5 more episodes to go, and I've never seen this series before, so I don't know the outcome. But I wanted to talk about the season so far. I've appreciated the twists and the turns and the strange bedfellows that we've gotten in this season, with the war with the Dominion, with Cardassians, with Klingons, with just all these different people who there's challenges to work with, and seeing them all work together has been very interesting, and I've enjoyed this season so far. One thing that I distinctly remember is seeing some shots with Kira in a Starfleet uniform, and I've kind of been waiting for that to happen. And I knew it probably would happen with the war with the Dominion. And in the episode that I'm watching right now is her first time in a Starfleet uniform. And while I appreciate her service to Bajor, I think that it is a great idea that Sisko chose to have her commissioned in Starfleet so that there is some communication and there is some back and forth there. And I just really appreciate it. All right, those are my thoughts about the season. Looking forward to giving more thoughts about the series in general later. X-Force is out.
Well, thank you for the input, Jeff. You know, that's a very interesting point. The term strange bedfellows could be applied to multiple episodes towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and there actually is an episode called Strange Bedfellows, right? It's the one of the ones with Kai Wynn and Dukat as a Bajoran.
Bajoran Dukat.
But I agree with Jeff that there are lots of twists and turns in the season,
Yes.
especially towards the end. And there's definitely like a different texture to season 7.
Yes.
Because we have all those things that go on with Ezri because we're sort of being introduced to her as we're trying to wind the show down. And then there's so many twists and so many crazy things that happen as we sort of quickly hurl towards the ending. So it's got a whole different feeling from the other 6 seasons. So I kind of get what he means. And of course, we have talked at length about Kira in that uniform. And yeah, it looks great on her, but also the meaning of Starfleet to all of these other characters is huge. Yeah, I think it just makes such sense that towards the end of the show, we see her dressed in the iconic uniform.
Well, and it's also such a callback and a contrast of the end of season 1, where, let's face it, the Bajorans didn't really trust the Federation, Starfleet, that much.
Right.
And Kira was just coming round to really believing and working with Sisko.
Right.
So it's quite a journey. The one thing, I'll add this in here. Thinking about it more, in some ways I wish season 7, the last part of season 7, the last 4 or 5 episodes, let's say, was actually a season unto itself. More like a modern season with 10 episodes.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's such an in-depth story, and you could have really gone into more detail with that. But, you know, I accept what we have, and I thoroughly enjoyed what we have. So it's not really a criticism. It's just almost I would like more.
Well, I get what you're saying, that the last part of it is really like a full season in modern Star Trek. That's very true. You'd maybe have to pull out, like, extreme measures. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
But I still thoroughly enjoyed it. Loved the ending.
Of course. Okay, so I closed the mailbag, and now I'm going to close the feedback section. And by the way, Jeff, X-Force11, thank you very much for the audio feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it, and looking forward to what you have to say about the show once you get all the way through. that wraps up season 7.
And apparently, there's no season 8.
Oh, what a bummer. You know what? We'll have to move on to Voyager.
Yeah, there's no Deep Space Nine: The Next Generation. Even if I do have a whole fanfic arc for Deep Space Nine: The Next Generation.
Did you want to do a podcast about that?
I don't know how our listener base would take it. That might be a special edition with Atiba and you two laughing in the background.
Oh, yeah. Well, we would laugh. Okay, so come back next week as we talk about what we left behind, looking back at Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
I believe that's available on Prime, so please watch it if you can. We don't know what happens in it, so we don't know yet exactly what we'll do, but we will talk about it if we learn anything or if there are sort of callbacks to things that we discussed on the podcast in the past. We will talk about it.
I have avoided watching it, so it will be an experience.
Oh, so you've never seen it? Okay, great. So come back next week for that. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this season or any season or the whole show overall, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. You can also reach us on the thing that used to be called Twitter, Threads, Instagram, at ReBingeIT, and we're also on YouTube at ReBingeIT. You can reach us on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the season wrap-up of ReBinge Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 7.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.